Hey, Soul Stories fam. We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and join our family. Now stay with us. The story begins. Boston was swallowed in the ash-gray palette of late November, the kind of weather that made an entire city seem to hold its breath. Wind swept in from the Charles River, rushing past rows of old red brick buildings, tossing the last fallen maple leaves into the air, and whipping Camilla Hart's hair into a tangled mess, as if even the day itself were pushing against her. She stood in front of the glass doors of the emergency department at Massachusetts General Hospital, her hands freezing despite being buried deep inside the pockets of her sweater. The cold seemed to crawl straight through her skin, slipping into her chest and tightening around her heart with a dry, suffocating anxiety. When the door slid open, Camilla jolted before she even realized she'd moved. A doctor in a white coat, a tall, lean man with pale gray eyes full of calm reassurance, walked toward her. "Camilla Hart?" His voice cut clearly through the noise of machines and the squeak of gurney wheels. "Yes," she answered, her voice raspy from 3 sleepless nights. Dr. Andrew Porter stopped in front of her. His face carried the solemn gravity of someone who had witnessed too many battles between life and death, but his gaze softened when he saw the red-rimmed worry in Camilla's eyes. "Good news," he began. "Your mother is stable. We were able to intervene in time." Camilla exhaled sharply, her shoulders collapsing as if someone had lifted a heavy coat from her back. She covered her mouth with her hand, a tiny sob escaping before she could hold it in. But Dr. Porter wasn't finished. "However, Margaret's condition is advanced chronic heart failure. She'll need long-term treatment, constant monitoring, and she may require surgery in the near future." He unfolded an estimate sheet. The bold number at the top blurred instantly. Camilla's vision went so hazy she had to blink hard to steady herself. She tried to focus, but the lines of text smeared into an indistinguishable white fog. She didn't need to read more. That number alone was enough to make the future feel like a door slamming shut. I'll find a way," she whispered, her voice softer than her breath. Dr. Porter placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a classic American doctor gesture, warm enough to comfort, distant enough to respect boundaries. "We'll do everything we can. You can go in and see her now." Camilla nodded and walked toward the room as if moving through a dream. The scent of antiseptic mixed with lavender from the diffuser, her mother's favorite, filled the air, soft but sharp enough to tighten something deep in her chest. Margaret lay still in the bed, her face pale but still carrying the gentle beauty of a former art teacher who once brimmed with passion. The heart monitor beeped steadily, as if reminding Camilla that her mother was still here, still fighting. Standing beside the bed was a woman with her arms crossed, silver blonde hair tied back, a dark brown leather jacket hanging over her broad shoulders. Dakota Hale, Camilla's mother's best friend since high school. "You're here," Dakota said, her voice rough in the way of someone who was strong in every situation, except when someone she loved was hurting. She just fell asleep again. Camilla set her bag down, stepped closer, and took her mother's cold hand. "Is she feeling any better?" "Heart rate's steadier," Dakota replied, "but the doctor says she needs long-term care. Kiddo, you holding up?" Camilla shook her head instead of lying. Tears rose, but she swallowed them hard. She had never liked crying in front of people, especially not in front of someone as tough as Dakota. The next day, Camilla received an email that made her knees weaken in the middle of the hospital hallway. "Bright Steps Academy is permanently closed due to bankruptcy. All employees are laid off, effective immediately. Health insurance will terminate at the end of the month." She couldn't breathe. No job, no insurance, no income. And her mother was in the ICU. A young nurse passing by paused when she saw Camilla's white face. "You good, honey?" the girl asked. Camilla forced the quintessential polite American smile, the kind people use to hide a storm inside. "Yeah," she said, voice trembling. "Just a rough day." But this wasn't a rough day. This was the day her entire life snapped in half. The hospital cafe was located on the ground floor, with large windows overlooking the rush of Bostonians hurrying along the street. Camilla sat alone at the table by the glass, hands cupped around a cooling latte, its last bit of warmth draining from her palms. She didn't know what her future looked like. No path ahead seemed bright enough to walk toward. "Are you Camilla Hart?" A woman's voice made her look up. Standing before her was a woman in her mid-50s, tall, elegant, commanding. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled into a sleek bun, and a navy wool coat rested over her strong, straight shoulders. She looked as though she had just come from a meeting with the board of a major hospital. "I'm Dr. Helena Hale," she said, offering a hand, "president of the Heart of Hope Foundation." Camilla stood quickly. "Oh, hello, doctor. I'm not sure." "It's all right," Helena said, motioning for her to sit. "I've been following your mother's case these past few days, and I'd like to discuss a solution with you." Camilla frowned. "A solution?" Helena met her eyes, sharp, direct, but undeniably sincere. "I'll be straightforward," as she began. "My son, Dr. Adrian Hale, is being considered for the position of chief of cardiac surgery, but the board values stability. In other words, they want a candidate with a family." Camilla didn't understand, not for the first 3 seconds. Then she did, and she nearly dropped her coffee. I, I'm sorry. Are you talking about marriage?" "Yes." Helena said it as lightly as if she were offering to pour tea. Camilla shook her head hard. "But why me?" "Because you're genuine," Helena replied. "Because you're separate from my son's world of power, and because you have the kind of heart people instinctively want to protect." Camilla froze. "I don't love him. I don't even know him." "You don't need to," Helena said plainly. "This would be a conditional marriage lasting 1 year. After that, you may part ways quietly. Fully legal, no lasting obligations." Camilla stared at her, her heart pounding. "And in return," Helena spoke softly as though opening a door, "my foundation will cover all of your mother's medical expenses and the surgery. Every cent. No conditions attached." Camilla went silent. The entire world blurred into a muffled hum. At that moment, a nurse rushed into the cafe, breathless. "Camilla, your mother's crashing. We need to move her to the ICU now." Camilla sprang up like a released spring and ran. Helena called after her, her voice steady and warm. "Think carefully, Camilla. Not for me, for your mother." The longest night of Camilla's life passed inside the ICU. Machines glowed blue, monitors beeped like fate's drumbeat. Camilla sat there holding her mother's hand, eyes swollen. Dakota stood behind her, voice low. "Kid, when someone reaches out to save you, you take the hand. This is America. Healthcare here doesn't show mercy." Camilla bowed her head and the first tears finally fell onto her hands. Early the next morning, before sunrise, Camilla stood outside Dr. Helena Hale's office. The warm yellow light from the hallway cast a circle on the tiled floor, making the scene look like the opening shot of a decision she could never undo. Helena stood by the window and turned when she heard the soft knock. Camilla stepped inside, fingers intertwined, eyes swollen but shining with unmistakable resolve. "I agree," she said. Helena nodded slowly, not pleased, not triumphant, just as though she had predicted the outcome all along. That day, Camilla Hart's fate turned a new page. A page that would lead her to a cold, distant man, a marriage without love, and a future more radiant, warm, and miraculous than she ever imagined. The ninth-floor hallway of Massachusetts General was always cold with its bluish-white LED lights. But that morning, Camilla Hart swore the place was colder than any hospital had the right to be. Maybe because she was about to meet the man she would marry. A marriage that was, in every sense, a contract. No romance, no flowers or candles, no promises about the future. Just an agreement to save the person she loved most, her mother. Helena Hale walked beside Camilla with the calm demeanor of a woman far too familiar with running meetings more intimidating than any board of physicians. "Don't be too nervous," she said, her hand brushing Camilla's elbow in a rare gesture of encouragement. "Adrian is a bit distant, but he's a good man." "A bit means what, exactly?" Camilla asked, sounding like a student about to be sent to the principal's office. "It means," Helena replied as she strode toward her son's office door, "don't expect him to smile on the first meeting." The remark was so brutally honest that Camilla laughed, though her laugh carried more trembling than amusement. Helena didn't knock for long. She merely tapped once before pushing the door open as if she'd walked in and out of this room all her life. And she had. Adrian Hale's office was so clean that Camilla wondered whether a robot secretly maintained it. Walnut shelves lined with medical research. Everything on his desk was placed at perfect 90-degree angles. A large window overlooking the Charles River, reflecting the cold light of a gloomy Boston morning. Adrian stood by the window, white coat hanging loosely over his shoulders, hands tucked into his pockets. His posture so straight he could have been used in textbooks to teach medical students about proper alignment. When he turned, Camilla nearly lost her breath. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark brown hair slightly tousled from a surgical cap, gray eyes as cold as a Maine winter morning, and a jawline sharp enough to headline a men's cologne ad. He was handsome, the kind of handsome that made people want to look 1 second longer, but didn't dare because it felt intimidating. And Adrian was looking at her, as if assessing the risk level of a heart transplant. Not as someone who'd be marrying her in less than 48 hours. "I'm Camilla," she said, trying to steady her voice. Adrian didn't shake her hand, didn't smile. He spoke in a low, distant tone. "Let's discuss the terms." Camilla blinked. "No, nice to meet you. No, hello. Just terms." Helena stood off to the side, unsurprised. She was used to this. Right. Adrian took a seat in the black leather chair behind his desk and opened a file as if he were reviewing a patient chart. "We're getting married for a purpose. I don't need an emotional relationship. I don't want complications. I don't like changes to my routine." His voice carried no malice. It was simply bare, straight as a scalpel. Camilla took a deep breath. "I'm marrying you to save my mother. I don't need romance. I don't have time for complications." For the first time, those gray eyes paused on her for more than a few seconds, as if surprised she wasn't intimidated. "Good," Adrian said slowly. "At least we're honest." The air split into two currents, cold and steel hard. That was the moment Camilla Hart realized. She and this man would be at odds from the very beginning, but the quiet kind of enemies, the low drama kind, and far too handsome for her to look at for more than 3 seconds at a time. 2 days later, the wedding took place. If there were an award for least romantic wedding in America, they'd have won first place effortlessly. The small garden behind the hospital, usually reserved for staff memorial ceremonies, had been repurposed for the wedding. It was cold, the weak winter sun barely bright enough to cast a silvery sheen across bare branches. No flowers, no music, no friends, no custom-made wedding dress. Camilla wore a simple white dress, which a kind nurse helped her pick out from a discount store near the hospital. Her hair was in a low bun, and her makeup was so light that it was almost invisible. Adrian looked like a CEO preparing to present a quarterly report. Dark gray suit, black tie, expression unreadable. No nerves, no joy, no irritation. Just silence. The kind of silence that suggested he was born to stand alone. When the officiant read the vows in a monotone voice that sounded more like instructions for operating a space heater, Camilla felt her heart sink. Not in pain, just stillness. When it came time for, "You may kiss the bride," Camilla wasn't ready. Adrian leaned down and kissed her for exactly 0.7 seconds. A touch and retreat kiss, purely procedural. Someone behind them whispered, "Wow, that was efficient." Camilla nearly burst out laughing at her own wedding. Right after the ceremony, as the first snowflakes of the Boston season fell, Adrian guided Camilla into his black SUV. Once the door shut, he placed a folder on her lap. "1-year marriage contract," he said. Camilla skimmed the neatly printed serif clauses. No sharing a bedroom, no emotional expectations, no interference in each other's personal lives, no entering Adrian's office. Must act like a happy couple in the hospital. Divorce immediately upon contract expiration. Signatures required. No one said, "Congratulations." Camilla simply looked up and said, "I only need strong Wi-Fi and a bed that doesn't squeak." For the first time, Adrian's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but like his icy composure had been poked. "I have good Wi-Fi," he replied. That afternoon, they returned to the hospital to visit Camilla's mother. She was asleep. Camilla leaned down to adjust the blanket, but Adrian stepped in first. He gently lifted her arm, checked the IV line, and adjusted her position so her blood flow wouldn't be obstructed. His movements were fluent, careful, tender in a way that made Camilla's heart stumble. She said nothing, but something in her gaze shifted. A little surprise, a little warmth. Helena stood by the door, arms crossed, eyes sharp as she watched the two of them. She spoke softly but loud enough for both to hear. Arranged marriages sometimes turn real, if the two of you let it. Camilla flushed. Adrian cleared his throat, turned away, and left the room under the excuse of checking the shift schedule. As the door closed, Helena smiled knowingly, and Camilla stood there watching the man who was cold as midnight frost walk away, and her heart quietly whispered a question she didn't dare say aloud. Could this marriage truly be just a contract? The first morning in Adrian Hale's apartment began with chaos. Not action movie chaos, but Camilla Hart-style chaos. Soft, clumsy, radiating the kind of accidents that even guardian angels want to resign over. The Back Bay penthouse looked like it belonged in a designer catalog. Open kitchen, white stone countertops, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. A place meant only for people who were elegant, cold, tidy. Not for someone like her. Camilla had only meant to toast some bread and make a latte to earn good wife points early in the morning. But Adrian's industrial-grade oven demonstrated a painful truth. Rich people's technology is not built for poor people's skills. She turned a knob, or at least she thought she did. 1 minute later, the toast burned to charcoal, smoke rising like she'd summoned her ancestors. 2 minutes later, the entire kitchen was drowning in smoke. 3 minutes later. Way-oh! Way-oh! The building's fire alarm screamed like the apocalypse was arriving early. Panicking, Camilla ran in circles around the kitchen, flapping a dish towel at the smoke, muttering, "No, no, no, please don't." She was on the verge of tears when the building intercom blared. "Emergency! Please evacuate temporarily." God. She had triggered a fire drill in a building full of doctors, CEOs, and lawyers. The bedroom door opened. Adrian Hale stepped out with messy hair, a gray sleep shirt hanging slightly off one shoulder, his gray eyes sleepy yet sharp, like it would take him only 3 seconds to switch back into surgeon mode. He stood in the hallway taking in the sitcom-level disaster, the smoking kitchen, Camilla spinning like a human fan, and the flashing alarm. He blinked, once, very slowly. "You set the place on fire?" he asked, voice gravelly from sleep. "No, I mean, there was a tiny, minor issue," Camilla pleaded. The moment she finished speaking, a fresh puff of smoke burst out of the charred toaster, as if tattling on her. Adrian sighed and dragged a hand down his face. A nurse in the operating room couldn't break his composure, but Camilla Hart somehow could. "Camilla," he said in the tone doctors use to deliver shocking news, "from now on, you are not allowed to touch any heat-producing device within 30 feet. Her cheeks burned. "I just wanted to make breakfast for you." He looked at her, longer, softer, then turned away before she could notice the shift in his eyes. "Next time, just wake me, I'll cook." They were swept out of the building along with everyone else evacuating, residents in a rush, wearing coats and holding coffee cups, some still wearing sleep caps. Everyone looked at Camilla like she was the tiny woman who had ruined Boston's perfect morning. She stood shivering in her hoodie, face pale. Adrian stood beside her, hands in his pockets, calm, as if he was already used to disasters. An elderly neighbor passed by, giving Camilla a sympathetic look. "Sweetie, first time burning a kitchen?" Camilla nodded, mortified. "Welcome to marriage," the woman winked. That evening, Camilla tiptoed into the kitchen like a guilty kitten waiting to be punished. Adrian was at the stove, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair damp from his evening shower, the warm lighting reflecting in his gray eyes. He chopped onions with movements so sharp, fast, and precise that even the knife seemed to respect him. She hovered at the doorway, hugging a pillow like a shield. "If you want to sue me using family law or civil law, I think I probably deserve to be sued." Adrian didn't look up. "You're not being sued." So, are you planning to kick me out? No response. Only the sound of chopping and the smell of butter melting in a hot pan. Finally, he glanced at her. Come here, stand back from the stove. Camilla straightened and approached, careful to keep the exact three-step distance he required. Adrian tossed the pan lightly, speaking in a calm voice. You burned toast, not the city. It was the building, not the city, she corrected in a tiny whisper. The corner of his mouth twitched. Very quick, very small, but it was the first smile she'd ever seen from him. Camilla froze, heart pounding like she'd just run a marathon. He placed a plate of pasta on the table and pulled out a chair for her. She blinked. You pulled out a chair for me? Basic courtesy, he replied. During dinner, Camilla sat stiffly, afraid to touch anything. Adrian ate slowly and she stole glances at him, at the straight bridge of his nose, at the focus in his eyes when he cut his chicken, at the stern line of his jaw that somehow didn't look as cold tonight. There was something warmer, softer, as if beneath all that ice there was a flame he kept hidden from the world. Mid-meal, Camilla whispered, You really hate me, don't you? Adrian paused, looked directly at her. Deep. No, he said. I'm just not used to living with a walking natural disaster. Her face turned bright red. A walking natural disaster? One that laughs, he added gently, just enough not to hurt her feelings, but still a disaster. Camilla bit her lip to stop herself from laughing. That night, in the warm quiet of the penthouse, they had dinner together for the first time, not as two strangers sharing a space, but as two people learning to orbit around each other. Not with love, but with something far more fragile, a beginning. Some people enter your life with thunder. Camilla Hart entered Adrian Hale's life with the soft click of an ER door inside a memory he'd spent 20 years trying to bury. On their third evening living together, Camilla took charge of the peace-offering movie night, her truce gift after the fire alarm incident. She laid out buttered popcorn, 2 mugs of hot chocolate, and turned on the dim lights in the living room, where the warm glow softened the gray sofa and made the entire penthouse feel like a winter cabin. Adrian stepped out of his office, white shirt sleeves rolled up, hair slightly mussed as if he'd run his hands through it after a dozen difficult cases. Seeing her kneeling on the floor while wrestling with the TV remote, he blinked. Are you planning to play the movie or dismantle my entertainment system? His voice was low, but not nearly as cold as before. Play the movie. Camilla put her hands on her hips. Now I only break things that aren't heat-related. The corner of his mouth jerked into a fleeting smile. It vanished just as quickly as it appeared. 10 minutes into the film, Camilla realized Adrian wasn't watching. He sat rigidly, hands clasped a little too tight, eyes flicking away from the screen every time the characters entered a crowded setting, a birthday party, a bustling square. She glanced over. You okay? Adrian jolted slightly like he'd been caught. I'm fine. He wasn't. Camilla was perceptive in the way people become after spending years watching loved ones battle their own anxieties. She lowered the volume. You don't like crowds? Silence, a few seconds, then a few more. Camilla thought he would brush her off like usual, but instead he said, I'm not afraid of crowds. His voice was even but dipped lower. I just don't like chaos. She nodded slowly. Hey, there's nothing embarrassing. My father died in a crowd. Adrian cut her off. Short, clear, brutal, with himself. Camilla held her breath. He stared straight at the screen, not watching the movie but looking through it, back into memory. He had a stroke, right there, in the stadium. Thousands of people around. Adrian continued, his voice flattening, like the surface of a frozen lake. My mom panicked. I was 10. I watched everything happen and couldn't do anything. Camilla's hand tightened on the cushion. My mother divorced the year after, Adrian said. She hated hospitals, hated doctors, and I stopped trusting crowds, or the idea that anyone could help, from that day on. Camilla looked at him longer than necessary, not with pity, not with sorrow, just the gaze of someone who understands pain, not to judge it, but to share it. And you still became a doctor, she whispered, because I hated feeling helpless. Adrian shrugged faintly. And because there are people like your mother, people who actually need to be saved. That last sentence silenced her. She had never seen Adrian gentle like this. Not with her, but with the world. She smiled, warm and unforced. You know, sometimes being hurt makes people become exactly what they needed most. For the first time, Adrian didn't dodge her eyes. Their gazes met, not fiery, not frantic, but soft, deep, and honest enough that she could almost hear their hearts. Halfway through the movie, Camilla curled up on the sofa like a sleepy kitten and fell asleep. She pulled her knees up, hugged the soft blanket, her breathing steady. Adrian looked over. She looked peaceful. Soft features, brown hair falling across her cheek, long lashes fluttering lightly. No one could look at her sleeping like that without feeling something in their chest loosen. He stood and walked over quietly, picked up the blanket from the armrest and tried to drape it over her. Attempt 1 dash dash. The blanket slid off. He frowned and tried again. Attempt 2 dash dash. It slid off her feet this time. Adrian exhaled sharply, leaned down and used both hands on the third try. Success! He stared at her for a long moment, at how she slept in his home like she believed the world was safe, at how she trusted he would never hurt her. That was when he realized something more dangerous than any surgery he was letting her enter places he had locked away for a very long time. Adrian leaned in, just a little, to brush a strand of hair from her cheek. At that exact moment, Camilla shifted, pulling the blanket closer, her sleepy expression so adorably disoriented that Adrian had to turn away to hide the rare smile threatening to break across his lips. He walked toward his room, pausing at the doorway with his hand resting on the cool wooden frame. Inside his chest, something shifted. Small but undeniable, like the first fracture in the block of ice he'd spent a lifetime building around himself. How did she get inside my heart so easily? He didn't have the answer, but he knew one thing for certain. Camilla Hart wasn't a kitchen disaster, not a walking accident. She was becoming something else, something Adrian Hale never expected he would need. The Beacon Heart Hospital Charity Gala took place on Saturday night in a grand hall overlooking the Charles River. Crystal chandeliers, red carpets, violins mingling with the soft clink of wine glasses. Adrian Hale looked like he had been born to walk into places like this. Wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo, hair sleek, his cold but commanding aura, making people instinctively step aside. Camilla stood beside him, her hands trembling slightly in the champagne-colored satin gown Helena had chosen for her. Beautiful, stunning, and absolutely nothing like Camilla. She felt like a cupcake that had wandered into a $1 million wedding cake shop. "You okay?" Adrian asked, eyes still looking ahead. "I think so," she whispered. "Just a little dizzy and a little scared." "Scared of what?" "These people, they're looking at me like I snuck in through the back door." Adrian glanced at her. "You're my wife. No one here has the right to look at you that way." A calm sentence, but Camilla's heart was anything but calm. The event went more smoothly than Camilla expected. Adrian shook hands with colleagues and posed for photos with the board. She simply stood beside him, wearing the polite smile of someone who was definitely, completely, totally comfortable, even though she wasn't. But when they prepared to leave, trouble appeared. Just outside the lobby, paparazzi were waiting, flash after flash exploding in blinding white bursts that sent Camilla reeling. "Dr. Hale, does your wife have proof that the divorce rumors are fake? Camilla, look over here. Are you two really living together, or is this just an arrangement?" Camilla flinched backward, heart pounding. This wasn't her world. This wasn't a place a preschool teacher belonged. Adrian saw her fear. His eyes sharpened instantly. He grabbed her hand and pulled her close, whispering quickly, "Don't panic. But trust me." She didn't even have time to process before one paparazzo stepped in closer, camera shoved so near she could see the man's mascara clumping on his lashes. Instinctively, she raised her hands to cover her face. But Adrian caught her wrist and suddenly pulled her into him. Before Camilla could breathe, his lips were on hers. A kiss, not scripted, not rehearsed, not belonging to anyone but them. The flashes exploded around them like white fireworks, but Camilla felt none of it. Only the heat of his mouth, the clean scent of his cologne, and his hand firm around her waist, steady, strong, as if she were the only thing he wanted to anchor amid the chaos. The kiss should have lasted a second, maybe two, just long enough to hide her face. But Adrian didn't let go. Not right away. And Camilla didn't push him away. She felt herself leaning in, fingers curling into his shoulder for balance. Her heartbeat was so loud she feared he could hear it. The world dissolved into a distant hum. Her whole body melted into warmth, sweetness, and something too real. When he finally pulled back, their breasts were still tangled. Camilla opened her eyes. Adrian looked at her for a brief moment, just a flicker. But in that flicker was something softer than ice, deeper than an early winter wind. Then he pulled her into the car, fast and firm, as if shielding her from further questions. On the ride home, the silence was so thick it felt like you could hear someone's heart still pounding unevenly. Camilla turned toward the window. Adrian stared straight ahead, his expression tight, as if he were taking the medical board exam. No one mentioned the kiss. No one dared. When the car stopped in front of the building, Camilla opened the door quickly, as if afraid he'd hear how flustered she was. "Good night," she murmured, almost running. "Yeah," Adrian replied, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. She stepped into the elevator, heart vibrating like a plucked string. Just as the doors were about to close, she heard footsteps. Adrian. She straightened instantly, like a student caught doing something wrong. "You forgot your scarf," he said, holding out the scarf she'd left in the car. "Thank you," she squeaked. He nodded, turning to leave. But he didn't. He looked at her for one more second, a very long second, as if trying to read something on her face. Camilla blushed and looked down. He turned away immediately, walking down the hallway fast, hair slightly tousled, shoulders a little stiff. Like someone who was also flustered to the point of irritation. The entire night they avoided each other like two teenagers who had just discovered what it felt like to like someone. Camilla lay on her bed, face buried in her pillow. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. It was just to hide my face. Just acting. But her heart didn't believe her. At the same time in his own room, Adrian stood leaning against the door, fingers brushing his lips as if he himself wasn't sure what had just happened. A fake kiss. But the feeling was far too real. And that terrified Adrian Hale, the coldest doctor in the hospital, more than anything ever had. The Boston rain that night seemed to have a personal vendetta against the entire city. Sheets of heavy water pummeled the brick-lined streets of Beacon Hill, cold enough to make anyone want to curl up under a blanket and forget the world existed. Except Camilla Hart. She wore a cream trench coat, her hair half-tied, her lips looking more alluring than usual, with just a touch of gloss. Tonight she had plans, a harmless meetup with her old college friend, Ethan Miller. Adrian noticed the moment she appeared in the living room. Not noticed as in silently complimenting her, but noticed as in standing straight, dropping his file onto the table like he'd just been attacked. "Where are you going?" His voice was low and calm, except that it was anything but calm. "Meeting an old classmate." Camilla fixed her collar. "A male classmate, by the way." Adrian frowned as if she'd just told him the world was out of coffee. "A male classmate?" "Yep." Camilla smiled. "It's nothing." Adrian crossed his arms, standing as stiff and irritated as a marble statue. "I don't care." But the tips of his ears turned red instantly. Camilla burst into soft giggles. "You're jealous." "No." Adrian responded way too fast. She teased him a little more, then left. She should have been back early. She should have. But nothing in life ever followed Adrian Hale's schedule. Camilla sat in a small book cafe with Ethan, listening to him talk about his design projects. Everything was completely normal, until her phone suddenly went black. She frowned. "Out of battery. I forgot my charger again." Ethan laughed. "Just like college." She laughed too. The rain grew heavier, and she had no idea another kind of storm was waiting for her at home. Adrian Hale was not the type of man who sat still when worried, but tonight he tried. He paced around the penthouse like an oversized cat, unable to find a place to settle. 9:30 p.m., no sign of her. 10:05 p.m., no messages. 10:21 p.m., first call, no connection. 10:26 p.m., second call. Still nothing. 10:39 p.m., third call. Hopeless. Adrian started cursing silently. Where was she? Was she ignoring him on purpose? What if she were stuck in the rain? What if she slipped? What if no? He hated this feeling, this helplessness. This is the fear of losing someone. A familiar memory touched him. The one where his father collapsed in a crowd and no one heard him call for help. Adrian grabbed his coat and practically stormed out the door. Rain slammed into his face as he ran through the streets. Water soaked through his shirt, clinging to his skin. His hair was a wet, windblown mess, but he didn't care. He checked every late-night shop, every lit cafe. No one had seen her. No one knew. Worry stacked itself on top of anger. Anger at himself for caring this much. Where is she? Why isn't she picking up? Why is she out with another man this late? Why is she scaring me like this? Finally, through the rain and dim streetlights, Adrian saw her. Camilla stood under the awning of an old bookstore, shielding her bag with her coat, her hair wet and sticking to her cheeks. She smiled as she said goodbye to Ethan. At that exact moment, Adrian's heart dropped, not from jealousy, but from relief so sharp it hurt. "Camilla!" he shouted, his voice echoing down the entire street. She turned, eyes wide. "Adrian! What? What are you doing here? It's pouring!" He walked toward her, heavy steps, rain running down his face, making his gray eyes look even deeper. "Looking for you," he said, breath unsteady. Camilla frowned. "I'm fine, it's just—" "Your phone was dead. You didn't come home. You didn't text. You disappeared." His words came out quick, tight, like they were being squeezed through a fist around his throat. Camilla froze for a beat. "My phone died. I wasn't avoiding you." Adrian stepped closer, just inches away now. "You can go anywhere," he said slowly, each word trembling in the air like a blade. "With anyone." A breath, a pause. "But don't vanish on me like that." His voice cracked, just a little on the last word. Anyone standing there would have heard it. Camilla looked at him, her heart softening like wet cotton. "Adrian!" She reached for his hand. His fingers were ice cold, stiff with worry. He looked down at her small hand resting on his, and every layer of ice he'd built over his lifetime, fractured just a little more. She stepped closer. Adrian didn't step back. The street was empty. Rain poured. Golden streetlights wrapped around them like a scene pulled straight out of a movie. Camilla lifted her arms around his neck, silently asking, "Is this okay?" Adrian gave a tiny nod, barely noticeable, but she felt it. He pulled her into an embrace, no restraint, no defenses. A real hug, their first. His body was rigid for a few seconds, then softened, his breath falling against her hair. She pressed her cheek to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Fast, strong, almost trying to burst through the soaked shirt. "Thought you were avoiding me," he whispered, guilty and raw. "Never." Camilla tightened her arms. "I've never avoided you." The rain kept falling, but for Adrian Hale that night, for the first time, the world felt a little less cold. Not because of the weather, but because of the woman in his arms. No one knew why, but that night the entire Back Bay of Boston went dark. A sudden blackout swallowed the city, one so used to glittering lights from hundreds of high-rises, into a sky of thick, quiet black. No hum of air conditioners, no elevators running. Only the sound of wind brushing across glass windows and the soft patter of rain hitting the roof. Camilla fumbled into the living room with the tiny phone flashlight guiding her way. She found a few white-scented candles on the dining table, lit them one by one, and let the warm yellow glow spread into soft, gentle circles. The penthouse, usually bright, sleek, and intimidating, now looked softer, warmer, like it was breathing quietly in its own light. Adrian stepped out of his office holding a flashlight, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly tousled from resetting the circuit breakers in the utility room. "This one's not my system's fault," he said, voice steady, but the candlelight reflecting in his gray eyes made him look gentler than usual. Camilla let out a small laugh. "I didn't blame you." She sat down on the rug beside the coffee table. A moment later, Adrian sat next to her, keeping a polite distance, then accidentally ending up closer than necessary. In the candlelight, his face looked less sharp. She could see a few strands of damp hair left over from the rain the night before. She didn't know why her heart was beating like this. Maybe blackouts always made people more honest. "Do you want to hear how I lost my job?" Camilla asked softly, as if afraid to disturb the peace. Adrian turned the candle nearest to him a little. "If you want to tell me." "I got terminated without warning." She smiled sadly. "No one's fault really, it's just sometimes life closes a door without even making a clicking sound." Adrian tilted his head slightly, studying her in the golden light. "Did that make you sad?" "Of course," Camilla admitted. "I love the kids. I love feeling like I was making a difference in someone's life. Losing that made me feel worthless." Adrian was silent for a few seconds. "When people lose what they love, they're not useless." His voice was low and honest. "They're just hurt." She looked at him, really looked. In the candlelight, he didn't look like ice. He looked like a flame hidden behind glass. She inhaled softly. "Your turn now. Tell me something no one knows." He looked down at his hands. Long, precise surgeon's fingers, curling slightly. "You know my mother didn't stay with us after my father passed. You told me. What you don't know," Adrian continued, voice tightening, "is that she didn't want me to become a doctor." Camilla's eyes widened. "But you're good at it." "Being good isn't enough," he said. "She said I was reliving the same fear. That every time I saved someone, I was putting myself back in the moment I couldn't save my father." He let out a humorless laugh. "She called me stubborn, foolish, and a disappointment." "Adrian," Camilla frowned, hurting for him. "We haven't talked much since." He stared at the flame. "I think I was never enough for her." A quiet settled between them, not suffocating, just true. Camilla lifted her hand and brushed it gently against his, testing to see if he would pull away. He didn't. Instead, his hand turned slightly upward so her fingers could touch his. Camilla felt a strange warmth, connection, unspoken and new. "You're not a disappointment," she whispered. "You're just someone who survived his own pain." The candlelight flickered across Adrian's face. He looked at her hand in his, small, soft, warm. Neither of them let go. Then their eyes met. Not a quick glance and look away. A real look, one that made the whole room blur, leaving only the two of them. Camilla leaned closer, not on purpose, but because her body seemed pulled toward him by gravity. Adrian leaned in, too, just a little, but enough for their breaths to mingle. "Camilla," he whispered, like a confession. She didn't answer. She pressed her lips to his, a kiss so light that someone watching from afar would think their cheeks merely touched. But in truth, this was their first real kiss. Not the staged one in front of paparazzi. Not for hiding, not for show, just soft, warm, slow, and painfully real. Adrian cupped the back of her neck, his thumb brushing the curve of her throat as if he was afraid she might disappear. Camilla placed her hand on his chest, feeling the quick, uneven rhythm beneath his shirt. The kiss lasted a few seconds, or a few minutes. She couldn't tell. When they finally parted, both were breathing lightly, foreheads touching, as if neither wanted to lose the warmth. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. There was so much in his eyes, surprise, longing, fear, and something Camilla didn't dare name. "That was," she started. "Real," Adrian finished. She smiled, her heart plunging into her stomach, then soaring back up again. The candle flames flickered. Their shadows merged on the wall, softer, closer, forming a new shape with no way back to what they were before. That night, in a city shrouded in darkness, in a quiet pocket of peace, everything truly changed. Boston on a Monday morning looked like a movie on fast forward. Blaring horns, red buses stopping and taking off, office workers rushing across brick sidewalks still damp with dew, and the last maple leaves trembling in the cold wind. Camilla loved that energy. It made her feel like no matter how messy life got, everything could still move forward. She wore a beige sweater, her hair tied up with a soft scrunchie, her cheeks pink from the chill. In her hands were two hot lattes, one extra foam latte she'd made for herself, and one sugar-free latte for Adrian, because she now knew he liked his coffee as strictly doctor standard as possible. Adrian walked beside her along Beacon Street, hands tucked into the pockets of his charcoal coat. His sharp features softened only by the exhaustion of taking a few days off after his shoulder injury. The cold blue sky reflected in his gray eyes, making him look like a walking iceberg. Except for those brief glances he kept stealing at Camilla, which warmed just a little before he caught himself. "You sure you want to walk?" Camilla asked, tilting her head to get a better look at him. "Your shoulder—" "I'm fine," Adrian cut in. "Not dying." "I know. I just don't want you turning into a wax statue in the middle of the street." He looked at her. "A wax statue?" "Yeah, pretty but useless." Adrian bit the inside of his cheek to hide a smile. She always caught him off guard in ways no one else could. They stopped at a crosswalk. Boston wind blew past them, icy and sharp, carrying the faint scent of cinnamon rolls from a nearby cafe. Camilla shivered. Adrian was about to tell her to zip her coat when a sharp screech split the air. They both turned simultaneously. A black SUV sped around the corner, tires skidding across the wet pavement, headed straight toward them. Everything happened in a millisecond. Camilla froze. Her latte nearly slipped from her hand. Adrian reacted without thinking. He grabbed her wrist, yanked her into his chest, turned his body, and pushed her toward the safe side of the sidewalk. The force sent them both crashing onto the brick ground. Camilla landed right on top of him, her head pressed against his shoulder, her breath hitting the collar of his coat. The SUV screeched to a stop barely half a meter from them. People around them screamed. Camilla scrambled up as soon as she caught her breath, her hair a messy halo from the wind and the fall. "Adrian! God, Adrian! Are you okay? Are you—" He winced, his left hand gripping his right shoulder. "I'm fine. Probably just a muscle pull, or a bit more dislocation." "You're in pain," Camilla's voice cracked. "Just the natural consequence of saving the reckless woman currently standing in front of me." "Adrian Hale!" Camilla snapped. "This is not the time to joke." That wasn't a joke. Pedestrians rushed over, and the SUV driver stammered apologies. But all Camilla could hear was the pounding of her own heart as she saw Adrian's shoulders sagging slightly, his breathing heavier than usual. Without a single second of hesitation, she grabbed his wrist. "No more talking. We're going to urgent care now." Adrian groaned. "Camilla, I'm a doctor. I can—" "You're a patient right now," she said, eyes round and frantic, "and patients are not allowed to argue." People watching them from the sidewalk couldn't help but think, they look like a real couple. Diagnosis, minor shoulder strain, nothing dangerous. Recommendations: rest a few days, no overexertion, no surgery, no lifting heavy things, no pretending to be made of steel. Adrian hated every one of those instructions. Camilla, on the other hand, she considered them a personalized care manual designed specifically for her. That afternoon, rain tapped softly against the penthouse windows. Adrian lay on the sofa, wearing a dark sweatshirt, his hair slightly tousled, because Camilla insisted on pressing a warm towel against his shoulder. He looked a few years younger like this, softer, less guarded, and partially defeated at her persistence. Camilla set a bowl of homemade chicken soup on the coffee table, the smell filling the room, blending with the faint scent of a vanilla candle. "Sit up," she said, lifting his head and tucking a soft pillow behind it. "I can eat by myself," he protested. "Yes, if you can lift a spoon with sheer willpower." Adrian narrowed his eyes. "Camilla." She scooped a spoonful of soup and blew on it gently. "Open up." He frowned. "You think I'm 5? If you don't open your mouth, then yes." Adrian let out a short laugh. A real one. Brief but warm enough to set off a soft glow in Camilla's chest. He opened his mouth. She fed him. He ate. She smiled. He pretended to be annoyed. She stubbornly kept going. They bickered with their eyes like two children. Adrian swallowed another spoonful, then looked at her a bit longer than usual. "You've been smiling this whole time. Is the soup that good?" "It's not the soup." "Then what?" Camilla lifted another spoonful, but her hand trembled slightly. She turned away, avoiding his gaze, the gaze that could peel back every layer she tried to keep in place. "It's nothing," she murmured. "I'm just happy you're safe." because she couldn't say it. Couldn't admit that her pulse wasn't fast from fear anymore, but from him, because he pulled her from that car, because he reassured her even while hurting, because he was lying here now, looking so real, because she liked him, truly liked him, in a way she could no longer hide. Camilla put the bowl down, gripping the hem of her sweater to steady herself. Oh, God, I like him. Adrian turned to look at her. Camilla? She took a deep breath and smiled, a small smile that even Boston's stormy skies outside couldn't wash away. It's nothing, she said softly. I'm just glad you're okay. And Adrian Hale, the man who always knew every heartbeat, every blood pressure, every biological measurement of everyone around him, realized something he couldn't measure with any medical instrument. Camilla Hart was making his heart fall, piece by piece. Boston dimmed as if someone gently pulled a velvet curtain across the sky. Streetlights cast warm golden streaks across the penthouse windows. Inside, the living room was lit only by a soft table lamp, creating a glow that made everything feel intimate, like an invitation for hearts to open. Camilla was folding blankets on the sofa, keeping herself busy because all day Adrian had been strange. He was quieter. He looked at her longer than usual. And every time she asked, "Are you okay?" he only shrugged, his expression so deep it left her flustered. She bent down to pick up the last blanket, then looked up to find Adrian standing right in front of her. His hair was still slightly damp from a shower, the charcoal sweater highlighting his broad shoulders and the gray eyes that caught the lamplight. But what made Camilla freeze was his expression. Unusual, soft, almost vulnerable. Camilla, he said her name in that low voice that made her whole body want to melt. Yes? She forced a smile. Do you need... Don't clean. His voice softened, lower. Sit down, please. She frowned, but her legs obeyed before her brain did. She sat on the sofa, her heart thumping as if she had run up 5 flights of stairs. Adrian stood for a few seconds, then sat too. Not on the other end, but right beside her. Close enough for her to hear his breathing, close enough for their knees to touch lightly, close enough that she didn't know where to place her hands. He inhaled as if gathering every ounce of courage he had. Camilla, he began, voice husky. I need to say this before I lose my nerve. You're scaring me, she whispered with a shaky laugh, hugging a pillow. No, he said quietly. I'm the one who's scared. He turned fully toward her, gray eyes locked on hers as if she were the only thing that existed in the room. You can leave this house anytime, he said. You've always had a choice. I never tied you to any contract. Camilla bit her lip. The words pricked straight into her heart. Because it was true, one day the contract would end, and she would have to walk away. Adrian continued, gentle but firm. But when the contract ends, he swallowed, the sound almost breaking. Don't leave this house. Don't leave me. She froze. Those words shattered something inside her, then reassembled it into something new. Too strong, too beautiful, too terrifying. Don't leave me, Adrian repeated, this time closer, truer. Even when all the obligations are gone. Tears rose faster than she could speak. Adrian, she whispered, voice trembling. He reached out, then stopped midway. You don't owe me anything. I just need you to know this. A tear slipped down her cheek. Why? She asked, voice breaking. Why do you want me to stay? He leaned in slightly, his gaze so deep she could only breathe in tiny sips. Because, he said, every word heavy with feeling, I can't unlove you anymore, Camilla. She dropped the pillow, hands flying to her mouth as more tears fell. Warm tears, the kind that filled her chest instead of hurting it. She tried to speak, but her voice came out like a breath. I feel the same. I've liked you for a long time. I tried so hard not to show it, but I failed miserably. Adrian let out a soft laugh, a rare one that made his eyes turn gentle like mist. You didn't fail, he said, brushing a tear from her cheek. I just realized too slowly. Camilla laughed through a small sob. You're making me cry so much I feel stupid. Then let me fix that, he whispered. He leaned in, slowly as if asking for every inch. She trembled. He saw it, and he chuckled softly. You're actually shaking? No, I'm not, Camilla protested, then trembled even harder. Adrian laughed, resting his forehead against hers. You're really adorable. She swatted lightly at his chest. Don't laugh at me. I'm not, he murmured, closing his eyes. His voice dropped. I love you. And this time Camilla was the one who made the first move. She grabbed the front of his sweater and pressed her lips to his. Their first kiss as a real couple. It was soft, sweet, warm, like a light turning on from inside their chests. Camilla kissed him while half laughing because she was shaking so much. Adrian wrapped an arm around her waist and whispered, Slow down, I've got you, every time her breath hitched. The kiss stretched on like a sunset, gentle, glowing, making the world outside disappear. When he pulled back, Adrian kissed her forehead, then the tip of her nose, then returned to her lips as if he couldn't stay away. Camilla, he said between breaths, thank you for staying. She smiled, cheeks tinted like wine. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. This is where I belong, with you. Morning sunlight spilled across Boston after a night of rain, golden and warm like honey pouring through the tall windows of Back Bay. But inside Adrian Hale's penthouse kitchen, that soft glow did nothing to save Camilla, who stood clutching her stomach, looking paler than the steaming cappuccino on the counter. She stayed frozen for a moment, one hand gripping the marble surface, her breathing fast and shallow, like someone trying desperately to convince her stomach not to revolt. This is bad, she whispered, eyes squeezed shut. No way. Footsteps echoed softly against the tile. Adrian stepped in from the hallway, still carrying that deliciously half-awake look of a man saved by morning coffee. He wore a white t-shirt and gray sweatpants. His hair mussed in that effortless kind of way that made him look imperfect, yet ridiculously attractive. Camilla? He set his mug down. Are you? She slapped a hand over her mouth as a wave of nausea hit her hard. Adrian froze. His doctor brain instantly lit up. Diagnostics loading, 0 patients left behind. But his heart reacted first, beating faster than medically acceptable for someone supposedly calm. He strode toward her, but didn't dare touch her too firmly. You have morning nausea? No, Camilla exhaled, forcing a shaky smile despite her green complexion. I think it's the ice cream from last night. You had 3 spoonfuls, 3 cans still, and you've been tired for days. I'm just sleep deprived. And you're sensitive to smells. Camilla whipped around, eyes wide. You've been keeping notes? I'm a doctor, Adrian replied, as serious as if that granted him a lifetime surveillance license. She opened her mouth to argue. But nausea round 2 hit, hard. Camilla gripped the sink, breathing unevenly. Adrian watched her, losing half the poised, unshakable surgeon, part of his identity right there. His right hand hovered near her back, like he feared touching her might break her into pieces. Camilla, he murmured, voice deeper than usual. You could be. Don't say that word, she shot back instantly. Pre-dash. Adrian! He shut his mouth immediately, then opened it again. Camilla, you're probably. No, I am not emotionally prepared to hear that word while hugging a sink. Her outburst silenced him. 1 second. 2. Then Adrian turned and walked straight out the door like a soldier assigned a top-secret mission by the Pentagon. Where are you going? She called after him, breathless. To get what we need. What do we need? He paused mid-stride, glanced back, his gray eyes darker than usual. A pregnancy test, Camilla groaned. Oh my God. 15 minutes later, the front door burst open as if the Boston wind had shoved Adrian inside. He rushed in with ragged breaths, his normally neat hair in total PX mess mode, his jacket covered in mist, and his eyes wide from sprinting for a cause more urgent than heart surgery. In his grip was a paper bag, far larger than necessary. Adrian? Camilla stared at the bag like it might explode. What on earth is in there? He placed it on the table with an intensity that could have been funny if she weren't panicking. I didn't know which kind to get, so I bought them all. Camilla exhaled and covered her face. How many did you buy? 8. You bought 8 pregnancy tests? 8 different kinds, he corrected, for accuracy. Inside the bag were also a box of anti-nausea pretzels, prenatal vitamins, 2 bottles of alkaline water, and a thick book titled Expecting for Absolute Beginners. Camilla let out a laugh that was half hysterical, half fond. You are one of a kind. Adrian cleared his throat and looked away. His ears were bright red, as if someone had forced him to wear a sweater 3 sizes too small. I'm not panicking, he insisted, looking absolutely like a man who had panicked himself into an alternate dimension. When the bathroom door finally opened, Camilla stood there holding the test. Her eyes were glossy, her cheeks flushed, her heartbeat so loud she could hear it in her ears. Adrian stood a few steps away, too afraid to move, like sound itself might shatter whatever truth she was about to reveal. Camilla held out the test. 2 pink lines, clear, bright, unmistakable. Adrian, she whispered, I'm pregnant. His entire world stopped. His eyes widened. His expression drained. His breath hitched. But in those gray eyes, another emotion rose stronger than any fear that had ever dragged him down. He stepped forward and wrapped her in his one good arm, pulling her against him as though she were the most precious thing he had ever managed to hold on to. She felt the fierce warmth radiating through him, the way he clutched her to his chest like she was everything. His breath trembled against her hair. His voice cracked softly like a prayer. Oh my God, Camilla! Camilla looped her arms around him, her tears spilling, relief, joy, and awe at the tiny miracle they'd created without even trying. Are you okay? She asked. Adrian let out a raw, unfiltered laugh that hit her straight in the heart. No, I'm too happy to function. She brushed away a tear on his cheek. You look like you're about to faint. I think I am. He placed a gentle hand over her stomach, reverent. We have a baby. Camilla smiled through uneven breath. Adrian, I love you. He rested his forehead against hers, voice deep and solemn, like a vow. I love you, and I love this little one too. Outside, Boston remained loud and chaotic, but inside the penthouse, a small family had just quietly formed. Warm, gentle, and beautifully unexpected. Boston's morning was as gentle as a piano melody. Sunlight slipped through the penthouse windows, warm and golden like honey, landing on Camilla's face as she sat curled on the sofa, hands resting lightly over her sweater. She was only 6 weeks pregnant, but the glow in her eyes looked as if that tiny life had already sparked an entirely new universe within her. Adrian was bent over the neatly arranged cabinet in his home office, pulling out boxes he once thought he'd never use again. Sketch paper, pastel markers, storage bins he'd saved from residency. He carried everything into the empty room at the end of the hallway. What are you doing? Camilla asked as she walked in, one hand on her hip. Repurposing the room, Adrian answered without looking up. For what? He paused, turned around, and his usually stern gray eyes lit up like a kid who had just found a rare toy. For a nursery, Camilla laughed, and then gasped when tears instantly filled her eyes. Adrian. He gave a tiny shrug, but his smile was so genuine she wanted to hug him on the spot. I thought I liked quiet, Adrian continued, voice low like night wind. But it turns out what I needed was your laughter. She didn't get to respond, because the doorbell rang. Helen Hale, Adrian's mother, entered like a perfectly composed New England breeze. Caramel wool coat, neatly pinned bun, and the faint, elegant scent of orchids at her wrist. Camilla was so nervous she shot straight to her feet. Helen stepped inside, looked at the two of them, looked at the awkward hug they were trying to hide, looked at Adrian's hand resting on Camilla's back like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then she smiled, a warm smile, soft as silk. Son, she said, pulling Adrian into a hug, I came to say I'm proud of you, and to congratulate both of you. Camilla froze. You already know? Adrian called me at 6 this morning. Helen turned to Camilla, her gaze softening. Thank you for bringing back something he lost a long time ago. Adrian's ears turned red. Camilla nearly cried again. Mom, Adrian said quietly, I thought you didn't want... Helen placed her hand on his cheek. All I want is your happiness. And this time, I think you chose right." The sentence washed away years of misunderstanding, an old wound between them that had never lacked love, only clarity. Camilla stood there, heart trembling with every word. That afternoon, the congratulations didn't stop with his mother. Camilla's family called on video chat. The screen lit up as her grandfather wiped tears like rain, and her mother, now recovered, breathed shakily from emotion. "My girl," her grandfather said, voice trembling. "You make me so proud." "You brought me hope again," her mother whispered, pressing her hand to her lips. Camilla could only cover her mouth and sob, while Adrian placed a steady hand on her shoulder, silently promising that from now on, she would never face anything alone. 2 weeks later, Adrian stood in the kitchen, hiding something behind his back. Camilla eyed him suspiciously. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Nothing," Adrian said, in the most suspicious tone ever. She took a step closer. He stepped back. She stepped again. He backed into the counter. She planted her hands on the counter, leaning in. "Adrian?" He let out a defeated breath and finally revealed a colorful donut box. But what made Camilla freeze wasn't the donuts. It was the icing message written in white on the lid. "Marry me?" Her hands flew to her mouth. Donuts ceased to exist. "Oh my God," she whispered as tears spilled over. "Adrian." He dipped his head slightly, a clumsy gesture, but so sincere it made her heart feel wrapped in velvet. "Camilla Hart," he said, voice low and a little unsteady, "will you marry me? Not because of any contract, not because of circumstances, but because I can't imagine any future without you." Camilla burst into tears, then launched herself into his arms, laughing and gasping. "Yes, oh my God, of course, yes." Adrian wrapped his arms tightly around her, kissed her hair, and for the first time in his life, he laughed out loud. A real, joyful laugh. The wedding was small, warm. The courtyard of an old church near the Charles River was strung with golden lights and soft clusters of baby's breath. 5 months pregnant, Camilla's belly was round enough for her to repeatedly crave fried chicken right in the middle of the ceremony. Adrian quietly handed her the small box he had hidden in his tuxedo pocket. Everyone burst into laughter. Adrian held her hands at the altar, eyes never leaving the face he had loved longer than he cared to admit. "This time," he whispered, "we choose each other." Camilla squeezed back. "And we'll choose each other every day." The final moment of the evening. They sat together in the nursery, still smelling faintly of fresh paint, under the warm glow of a nightlight, listening to the tiny heartbeat coming from the handheld ultrasound. Adrian wrapped his arms around Camilla from behind, one hand resting over her belly, eyes closed as if memorizing the sacred sound deep into his soul. A small heartbeat, steady, strong, growing every day. And in that room, their family began, not perfect, not orderly, but warm, alive, and breathtakingly beautiful. A family born from chaos and becoming the best thing that ever happened to them.